Just a short time ago, Senator Markwayne Mullin wrapped up his confirmation hearing, which was often contentious, sometimes accusatory. There were numerous questions about how ICE would operate under his leadership compared to his controversial and ousted DHS Secretary Kristi Noem.
What Secretary Noem did was give the green light to lawless behavior. Are you going to give the green light to lawless behavior?
I will operate within the parameters and the policies and the laws that you guys set for me.
And the Constitution of the United States.
Of course, the Constitution
of the Fourth Amendment, among other things.
Of course, the Constitution of the United States. I'll swear to uphold that when I get sworn in. But be very clear, I don't get to choose the laws that I enforce. You guys pass the laws. I enforce those laws.
Right.
And the reason why we haven't had...
Shooting a protester who was exercising his First Amendment speech and carrying a lawfully licensed gun is not a lawful behavior.
Joining me now is Alan Orr, immigration attorney and past president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. I wonder if what you heard from Mullin gives you any indication about how he will direct ICE, and will it be in any way importantly different from what Kristi Noem did?
Right. So what's insightful for me about the position in general, forget about who we're saying should be secretary, is that his resume doesn't meet the qualifications for the position. He's not trained in law. He's not trained in national security. And so in that answer, his illicit question was, are you going to follow the law? And his answer could not be more broad or on the street of a common person saying, of course I will. But that's not the nuance that exists right now in Homeland Security. They are not following the law. And that's why many of these cases are in federal court and national courts trying to resolve this issue of, can you do this sort of warrantless arrest? So he doesn't have the sophistication knowledge. I'm sure he's a nice person, but likability should not be the qualification for one of the most important cabinet positions in the United States.
So let me play what Mullin actually said, specifically about DHS officers entering homes when they did not have a judicial warrant. Take a listen.
We will not enter a home or a place of business without a judicial warrant, unless we're pursuing the individual that runs into a place of business or a resident or a house.
What did you make of that?
I think that's a broad statement for him to say, but that doesn't make it a policy. I mean, that's actually the law right now, and they're not following it. So his intentions are great, but how is he going to implement that? We see a lower of a standard of the people that they're hiring in ICE, lowering the age limit or changing the age limits and sort of allowing this lawlessness to sort of happen. And that's why we can say we have seen a change in some of this on-the-ground movement since Tom Homan has come in. So is he just going to toe the line where Tom Homan is right now, or is he going to do something else? That's my main issue here. He doesn't have the vision for the Department of Homeland Security with regards to immigration or anything else. We are so focused on immigration right now and protecting the homeland that we are now the eagle who has eggs in the nest, protecting it from the snake, but forgetting about all the other birds that are coming to eat the eggs while we're wasting our time fighting and killing the snake. We have to be able to cover everything. And right now, what happened in this hearing was not a covering of the fraud, not a covering of the cybersecurity, not a covering of the crimes, not a covering of the drugs brought in by United States citizens, and much less any of the other policies and issues that the Department of Homeland has covered since 2003.
You know, one of the things he said is his goal was to get the DHS essentially out of the headlines. And of course, there were no bigger or more disturbing headlines than about Alex Preddy and Renee Good, two American citizens who were killed at the hands of ICE agents in Minneapolis. He did retract his statement on Alex Preddy, who he basically said he, went there to cause trouble. But there wasn't an apology either. And there were also questions about his own behavior with regards to the chairman, which Rand Paul said called into question what message it sends to ICE agents about using violence. And I wonder, as you look at that as a whole, and the concern the American people have about the way ICE agents have gone about their jobs, do you have any sense, even given understanding that he doesn't have the resume that past DHS chiefs have had, that he would indeed do anything differently?
I don't think he would do anything differently, because we do still have concerns about the policymakers in the White House and who really is driving these issues. I mean, we saw a letter signed by Tom Homan saying he was the border czar yesterday, making concessions on the Hill. So there are some concerns about that. But regards to his personality, he didn't make any concessions. As an officer of the court, when I'm in someone's judicial proceedings and they're the judge, I need to defer to them. There was no deferment in this hearing to the committee. He didn't have to honestly or earnestly do anything other than just sort of defer to his personality. And he chose not to do that. He still had a stance. And even when he read his opening remark, he said, let me get this off of my chest first. That's not the type of person that I would want leading any type of security for any type of individuals, because he said he could fly off the handle. He'll apologize for it later. That's not what I need in this chief position.
Eleanor, always great to hear your side and to have you on the program. Thank you so much.
Markwayne Mullin was testifying in his Senate confirmation hearing. And that Mullin hearing kicked off with an absolutely bonkers exchange between the DHS nominee and the committee's Republican chairman, Rand Paul. A sort of Republican on Republican, nerdy but aggressive food fight. And just to give you a sense of what an unmitigated disaster this was, I want you to watch this moment from Fox News. When the conservative network gave a play-by-play, they were basically giving a play-by-play, like it was a boxing match, and then abruptly they cut away as soon as the fighting started.
I'm going to secure Kentucky and take care of Kentucky as
all right. So these gentlemen have a history, Dana.
Yeah.
Quite clear.
I have to say, I didn't realize that Rand Paul and Markwayne Mullin had this kind of a personal animosity. It seems like Rand Paul's very angry with him.
So we'll see where that goes. But in the meantime, we've got another hearing that's about to kick off.
Yes, because any moment, the nation's top intelligence and law enforcement officials testifying at a Senate hearing on worldwide threats.
Boy, this looks like it's getting heated, everyone. Something may be about to happen. Republicans are fighting. Conservatives, cover your eyes. And quick, let's go to the other hearing where perhaps possibly likely nothing is happening. Do you ever watch NFL Red Zone? It's like the channel that flips between football games happening at the same time to show you the most exciting parts of each game, to kind of keep you hooked on the action and keep you watching, because they're going to show you the most important plays and the key parts of the game. Well, Fox News was kind of like the opposite of NFL Red Zone today, using the fact that there were two hearings to cut away from the spicier one whenever something interesting actually happened, which was still a tall order for the folks at Fox because, like I said, a lot happened in both of these hearings. So that DHS hearing began with this big fight between the chairman of the committee and the nominee, one that has been, by the way, simmering for a long while now. I mean, it dates back to last month when Senator Markwayne Mullin gave an interview to a local Oklahoma reporter and ripped into his fellow Republican Rand Paul. Mullin called Paul a freaking snake. That's a direct quote, by the way, a freaking snake. And then Mullin referenced a 2017 incident in which Rand Paul was assaulted by his neighbor in Kentucky, leaving Paul with 5 broken ribs and other serious injuries. Now, despite the horrific nature of that attack, Markwayne Mullin told that local Oklahoma reporter that he actually sympathized with Paul's violent attacker, saying, quote, "I understand completely why his neighbor did what he did, and I told him that to his face." Well, there's a lot to be said about that. But saying all of that out loud was quite a choice, given that just about 2 weeks later, after he did that interview, Trump nominated Mullin to be the new Homeland Security Secretary. And he may have had an inkling of that. He may have even wanted the job. And that was, of course, going to set him up for a confirmation hearing before the committee, whose chairman just happens to be Rand Paul.
I just wonder if someone who applauds violence against their political opponents is the right person to lead an agency that has struggled to accept limits to the proper use of force. Tell the world why you believe I deserve to be assaulted from behind, have 6 ribs broken, and a damaged lung. Tell me to my face why you think I deserved it. And while you're at it, explain to the American public why they should trust a man with anger issues to set the proper example for ICE and Border Patrol agents. You offer no apology.
Sir?
And you offer no apology today and no regrets. Haven't heard the word apologize, haven't heard the word regret, haven't heard I misspoke and it was heated and I made a mistake. Haven't heard any of those words.
Sir, actually, it wasn't heated. And I'm not apologizing for pointing out your character.
Good. So you're jolly well fine, and you want the American public and the people up here to vote that may or may not vote for you to know that you supported the felonious, violent attack on me from behind.
Oof. I mean, like I said, that was how Mullin's confirmation hearing started today, because, of course, Rand Paul is the chairman. He gets to speak first. And things, though, really didn't get better from there, because literally right after that tense exchange, Mullin had another extremely awkward exchange. And just for some context here, Markwayne Mullin is a former congressman who has never served in the U.S. military, and yet he's claimed to know the, quote, smell of war, insisting for years that he was involved in some kind of top secret overseas mission on behalf of the United States. Well, here's just a bit, and I could not play you the whole thing because we want to talk to all of our amazing guests, but here's just a bit of what it looked like when he was confronted about that multiple times throughout the hearing.
You told Fox News interview, quote, "War is ugly. It smells bad." So where did you smell war?
Sir, I just said that this was classified.
Which agency classified it?
It wasn't an agency. It was done here, well, in the House on the time.
The House classified it.
I'm assuming. I wasn't on Intel.
We're just not really aware of how the House classifies things.
I have no idea.
It's a little difficult for us to go ask about a program that has no name, and we have nobody that we know to talk to about it. So I don't know how we would begin doing this without your cooperation. But
I'm willing to cooperate.
Okay. It was a super secret mission that was classified through a process that's absolutely so secret that he doesn't even know about it himself. And neither do two senators who have been in the Senate quite a while know how the House would have classified such a super secret, double secret mission he was on. Now, that whole thing was such a cringy disaster that by the end of the day, Senator Paul had decided that he was voting against Senator Muellen's confirmation, although my bet is he was going to vote against him when he gave that interview just a couple of weeks ago. It's worth pointing out here, though, that as chairman of the committee, Paul could have effectively vetoed Muellen's nomination, at least for a while, by massively delaying his vote out of the committee, if he wanted to. Doesn't seem like he's going to do that. We'll see. But as confusing and kind of bizarre as all of that was, things got even worse when Senator Mullen was asked about a key part of the department he'd be overseeing in his new job.
What is the primary mission of Homeland Security investigations?
From the IG or from us?
I'm sorry, from Homeland Security Department. There's HSI is within Homeland Security. What is their primary mission?
Well,
it's not a trick question either.
No, I understand that. And every agency, sir, we have specific missions that we are targeted to look at our aspect of protecting the homeland. In different directions, have different paths. And in different agencies, region-wide, there are 22 of them there. We all need to be in the same boat, row in the same direction, working for one common goal. And as I said, that's protect the homeland, bring peace of mind, and secure the confidence of the American people.
There were a lot of boat analogies there, but Senator Mullen, that doesn't word salad, that whatever that was, didn't even come close to describing HSI's primary mission. And the mission of that agency is actually very specific.
HSI specifically is very important because they specialize in dealing with human trafficking, human smuggling, counterfeit, bank fraud, things of that nature.
All important stuff. Senator Mullen, though, didn't appear to know what HSI is, what their mission is supposed to be, and what they are doing now. Look, there are a lot of remaining questions about why Markwayne Mullin felt the need to root for the neighbor who beat up Rand Paul and what double super secret mission he may have been on. But what today's hearing made very clear is that he is not prepared for the job of Homeland Security Secretary.
Rand Paul, who probably more than anybody had some pretty tough back and forths with the nominee, has just come out, was talking to reporters. Here's some of what he said.
We have an agreement now to go over to the classified hearing and hear about his classified mission that, hasn't been fully detailed to anyone. If that goes as planned and is forthcoming, I still plan on having the vote tomorrow.
Well, Chairman, are you planning on voting for this nominee?
I think there are anger issues. I think there's a lack of contrition, both about the violence that was perpetrated on me, but really the violent episode he was involved in the Senate committee where he's told the media, frankly, that he doesn't regret it. He's also told the media he said it again today, that there's historical precedent for violence, that caning and dueling happened all the time. And I pointed out, well, it was illegal 170, 200 years ago. They would actually flee and they would do it in areas they could find where the law didn't reach. Sometimes they would actually go to Canada. Sometimes they'd go from one state to the other. But the mass of civilized response, even in the 1850s or 1830s, was against dueling. That's why dueling was made illegal. The fact that he can't bring himself to say that, really we shouldn't settle political questions with violence, I think that would be a terrible example for ICE and for our Border Patrol agents. We're in the midst, I think, of a crisis where there needs to be more direction from the top. And a guy who brawls, a guy who can't even say he's sorry about, wishing violence on me and really applauding the attack that happened on me, can't come to say that. I don't know how he could, from my point of view, be a leader of ICE or Border Patrol.
So that's
Kevin McCarthy.
Are you saying you're no senator?
Kevin McCarthy was out here saying that's passion. Fetterman was out here saying have a shorter memory, effectively. How does that make you feel that colleagues of yours are saying brush it off?
But I still remember lying in bed, not being able to get up, having to have a rope tied to my bed to try to pull myself up. I had 3 ribs that were completely snapped in half. So the ribs rubbed on each other for 3 months. My lung was damaged such that they had to remove a part of it. I coughed up blood for a year. So, no, I don't think highly of people who think that that's okay. And really, this is sort of a low-bar question. You would think that a nominee would come forward and say, I was angry at you over that vote because I put on the internet what the vote was. I didn't single them out, but I put a list of the Republicans who voted to continue the refugee welfare program, which I thought on the heels of the fraud in Minnesota was, from my perspective, a bad vote. He wasn't singled out. His vote was just listed. He became angry at that, and he responded by saying, oh, yeah, everybody hates him. This is why he deserved to be attacked. But many people don't know how severely I was injured through this and how much I suffered for years. I barely could walk for months and months and months on this. So, no, without an apology, even with this, even with him knowing it was going to come up, couldn't get an apology. His idea is that we have political differences. Political differences don't mean I wish harm. Gary Peters and I have political differences. We don't agree on a lot of things. I would never wish him harm. If he were attacked, I would send my condolences and send flowers. I wouldn't say, oh, that's great, and think it's funny that someone was attacked. So, no, I don't think that kind of person sends the right message to ICE agents who the country at large has said, well, gosh, is there a proper use of force going on, or do we have to have more rules with our agents so we don't have tragic killings of citizens? And I don't know how we get that from a guy who says he'll jump over the dais and people deserve to be punched in the mouth. And really, caning and dueling is a good example for the modern Congress.
Did you block Senator Britt from doing the introduction for Senator Mullen this morning?
Everybody that applied for everything, I've been probably more conciliatory towards this hearing, even with my misgivings, than anybody ever in the history of Congress. This is the fastest nomination ever done for the Department of Homeland Security. This is also going to be the fastest vote for the Department of Homeland Security, despite my misgivings. Anybody that wanted to do an introduction, the deadline was several days ago. So we heard from Senator Langford, and we had no quibbles with that. Anybody that didn't meet the deadline didn't get to introduce.
Did you warn the White House about that classified trip that he...
Say again?
What questions do you have about that classified trip he said he took?
Well, I'm one of these people who think that we silo off too much information from the public. We classify everything, but then here they super classify, and only 8 people get to know. So often when we're going to war, they tell 8 people, it's like, oh, we've notified Congress. So I don't think that is adequate. Do you remember when the waterboarding was going on, and they said, well, we notified 8 people. Half of them couldn't remember that they'd been notified, and none of the rest of us were, and that's not sufficient. There is nothing in the Constitution about electing 8 people. There's nothing in the Constitution about siloing us off. So no, I think that we ought to hear about it. It may be innocent, but it makes people curious when you say, oh, I'm doing secret missions for somebody, but I won't tell you who, and only 4 people in the world know about this. So hopefully the briefing will. I'm going to do one more.
Just to be clear, can you get to yes?
Have any of your Republican colleagues expressed to you privately that they are having reservations about Senator Mullen?
I suspect the Republican side, other than me, will be fairly unified.
Is there anything that could get you to guess?
Do you believe this was a genuine classified trip the senator took?
I have no idea. So we'll find out here in a few minutes.
Did you warn the White House about your opposition?
Are you going now, Senator?
Senator Gary Peters of Michigan joins us at the table. He's the ranking member of the Homeland Security Committee, and I say struck a very appropriate profile today, sir.
Very much so. Look, Senator Rand Paul and Markwayne Mullin have history. Senator Paul opened the hearing with that history. He asked him to apologize. He did not do that. This is Rand Paul this afternoon. Take a listen.
Nobody really in the modern age that I know of, other than Markwayne Mullin, is justifying political violence as, oh, well, we need a manly way to settle our differences, and sometimes people just need to be punched in the mouth. That, to me, is bizarre, and I think makes him unfit to lead federal law enforcement.
So can you vote for him?
No. I mean, an apology might have had a chance, but he's had several chances.
Is Senator Paul the only Republican member who is not going to be voting for Senator Markwayne Mullin on that committee?
Yeah, that's my intention. He'll be the only no vote, and so we'll see how the vote total plays out. But clearly, it was quite an opening to the hearing, and as you know, the assault on Senator Paul was pretty significant. In fact, he went into great detail as to how violent it was. And to have Senator Mullin say, well, it was, it's okay. It was understandable. So anybody who's the victim of that kind of crime and to think that a United States senator says, well, that's what he gets, is simply unacceptable and clearly unacceptable to be a Secretary of Homeland Security at a time when we need to de-escalate, we need to bring down the rhetoric. We've got a Department of Homeland Security that has lost the trust of so many of the American people. And how do we rebuild that trust? It's certainly not someone who is prone to violence and is a hothead.
There was a moment of intrigue in today's hearing. There was a question that Mullin repeatedly sidestepped about an international trip he took, classified by an unknown entity for an unknown purpose, for an unknown training. Members moved to a classified setting in order to get more details. Were you satisfied by the answers you got about that in the SCIF?
No, I wasn't satisfied. And a lot of us kind of sat back and heard some of the explanations and how it was classified, and he wouldn't get into the specific details in a lot of respects. And it just became more complicated and more confusing. And this is issue. This whole issue of some of the bio and the things that he's said on podcast and television over the years, kind of making him look like he's some sort of operative. There's no evidence to support that kind of thing. And it really talks to his trustworthiness. So can we trust him? If this is so hard to get this information.
His trustworthiness vis-a-vis whether or not his priority is the United States, or his trustworthiness whether or not he's able to answer a simple question?
Certainly, if he can answer questions and not change the story constantly. When you think about a Secretary of Homeland Security, you want somebody who's going to get on camera, talk about a situation, and sometimes complex and certainly dangerous situations, and you want to believe that what the person is saying is actually true. And so if we're having a hard time getting a straight answer from him when he needs our vote, I can't expect that we're going to get any kind of straight answer from him once, if he is confirmed. Why would he do that? And so I think that that's really disqualifying for a lot of reasons.
There's a lot that's disqualifying about this man.
Yeah.
And yet, he's going to become the next Secretary of Homeland Security. Why? Because there's nothing to stop them. Is there? I mean, look, I still marvel at the fact that what's his name, Senator, held up the nominations for DOD for 100+ days.
Tommy Tuberville.
Tommy Tuberville.
Yeah.
Y'all can't stop this?
Yeah.
100 days. Not a damn nomination went through the United States Senate because one senator said it ain't happening. Mm-hmm. And it only happened when he decided, okay, now I got what I want, I'll move on. So, yeah, it'll get out of committee. Mm-hmm. The rules in the Senate aren't the rules in the House, where the minority is stuck. What options do you have, or are there available to prevent what everybody on the Hill knows is a bad appointment? Because, look, to be honest, this is one of every bad appointment this president has made, and they've all gone through. And here we are now suffering the consequences of it as we've witnessed all the fallout from these people in these jobs. Right. So when do we get to stop this?
Yeah, the difference with all of those military appointments is that you can do it if you have an individual vote on everybody. And when you have a long list of people, there's just not enough time to do that. So you have to do it en masse, and that's usually never controversial because these are people who've gone through the process of being selected. But this is different. This is a vote, and clearly a cabinet secretary will get a vote on the floor of the Senate. And under the rules we have now, just a majority vote. The filibuster doesn't apply here. So it's just simply a majority vote. Republicans have 53. Rand Paul will likely be a no, but that's still not enough to change it if every other Republican is there. And it's the realities of what we got to deal with. But as you said, even if you look at nearly every appointment that we've seen from the Trump administration, it's not about experience. It's not about any kind of qualification, except that you are 100% loyal to the president. And we also know that he'll be Secretary of Homeland Security if confirmed, but he's not going to really be running it. It's really run by Steve Miller, and it's run by the White House.
Which means nothing changes, Simone.
Right,
well,
exactly
I mean, Senator Gallego asked that very question today, and Mark Wayne Mullin said he serves the president. Look, Michael's point about Republicans are going to vote for this, not Rand Paul, but everybody else, and John Fetterman apparently today, before hearing some of the things in the hearing, said, I'm going to support you. It's crazy to me because this is what Senator Mullin said about the shooting of, I believe this is in reference to Renee Good. Take a listen.
It's very clear that an officer had to make a split decision in that case as the car was running towards him and did strike him. At that point, that car becomes a lethal weapon. And an officer that there was another officer obviously giving her verbal commands.
So are you saying, and I apologize for interrupting you, but you're saying you do not regret that statement?
I'm saying that the investigation is going on, but what we've seen... There
is no investigation, Senator. In fact, that was my next question to you.
Senator,
don't you think there should be an investigation?
My understanding is that there is. I will find out if I'm able to get confirmed.
I will note that after Renee Good was killed, Mark Wayne Mullin said that the shooting was justified. I will remind people that the officer shot and killed Renee Good while streaming with a gun in one hand and his cell phone recording it in another hand. Right. Deputy AG Todd Blanche said in January that there would be no investigation into Good's death. And last week, attorneys for Good's family told CPR News that their January 14th letter to ICE has gone unanswered. Mm-hmm. How can folks still vote for him given these kind of statements?
Well, I agree. And I brought up in the hearing about Alex Preddy that basically he said immediately after the incident, he said, well, he was deranged and was coming to cause mass casualties. That clearly was not the case at all. He said it immediately. So my question was, we did hear that from Kristi Noem, basically the same thing. So are we going to expect just the same thing? You're going to have a rush to judgment? What's the difference here? We need to have someone, as I mentioned at the top of the segment here, we've got to have someone who brings down the heat, someone who brings down the rhetoric, someone who's going to try to rebuild trust in the Department of Homeland Security. And what we got is a guy who's just going to be a clone of what we've saw and seen from Kristi Noem.
Joining us, Punchbowl News co-founder and MS Now political contributor Jake Sherman, staff writer for The Atlantic Nick Miroff, and former ICE director Sarah Saldana. I want to start, before we get into the trust level, I want to start with the politics of this and whether this nomination, Jake, is ever even going to make it out of committee. Because the chairman, and we discussed this back when he was nominated, the chairman of the committee, Rand Paul, and Mark Wayne Mullin have a history. Mullin has called Rand Paul a snake and has said he understood why his neighbor beat him up. Rand Paul got into that with him today. I want to play a little bit of that exchange.
Is that still your opinion, that political disputes can sometimes and often only be resolved by violence?
No, I don't always agree with that. I don't believe in political violence. I've made that very clear. But sometimes people do need, theoretically speaking, sir, I get it. It's about character assassination for you. That's the way this game is played. I understand it. And you are making this about you, which is fine, but that doesn't keep me as Secretary of Homeland Security.
Character assassination when you were the one lauding the assault. Who do you think started that character assassination? I'm just repeating what you have done in character assassination. I'm repeating your support for the assault. So that's somehow something I started?
No, sir. What I'm saying is you're adding a lot to it.
So he broadens this out, Jake, to say that this is about temperament. He also brought up, we played this as well, the exchange he had with the president of the Teamsters, saying that they could go outside and fight during a Senate hearing a few years back. And he was trying to make the point, Rand Paul, that Markwayne Mullin is not the kind of guy that you want at the top of a law enforcement agency that has problems with violence and has problems with the use of force. So can Markwayne Mullin make it out of committee?
Probably, and the only person you need to ask there, Katie, is John Fetterman, who said that he is going to vote. In the past, he said he's going to support Markwayne Mullin, and he's on the committee. And it's very clear to me, absent some reversal that is so obscene that we can't even imagine what it looks like, that Rand Paul's going to vote against him. So if Rand Paul votes against him, he needs John Fetterman. John Fetterman says he's a yes. And he'll probably almost certainly get cleared on the floor. The more interesting thing to me, well, two things. He does run hot, Markwayne Mullin. We know that. Normal people don't say that that they understand why, people with a normal temperament, rather, don't say that they understand why their neighbor assaulted them. That doesn't happen. That's not something you and I hear in everyday interactions with people. And nor do they, threaten to fight someone in the workplace during a congressional hearing. So that does indicate that he does run a little hot. Okay. So the more interesting thing to me is this issue over this foreign trip that he took, where he said it was classified and he signed a non-disclosure agreement. And the committee was like, what are you talking about? We want to know more about this. This all happened when he was a member of Congress. Now, listen. The administration doesn't need to nominate someone impeccable for any role, because the Republicans in the Senate mostly back up the president, almost always back up the president. And furthermore, Markwayne Mullin clearly made the calculus that he doesn't need to assuage Rand Paul. So everyone here everyone's body language here indicates that they believe this nomination is on a glide path. I have no reason to disagree with that assessment, but it does underscore that Mullin is a somewhat unconventional pick for this role, and a somewhat controversial pick for this role.
Help me understand the foreign trip and
I don't understand it, Katie.
Answer. What's the question about the foreign trip?
He's been indicating for years that he has been involved with overseas travel, and he talked about the scent of war and everything like that. Markwayne Mullin is not a veteran. He did try to go to Afghanistan to rescue people a couple years ago during the Biden administration. He's not a veteran, but he says he's had these experiences overseas and led people to believe, and the Washington Post did a great story about this morning, led people to believe that he was involved in something. And he today said it was classified, then behind closed doors to senators this afternoon said he had signed an NDA. Listen, I've never heard of senators or members of the House being involved with trips as lawmakers where they're subject to non-disclosure agreements and are involved in anything resembling combat. So I don't know what he's talking about, to be honest with you. And
or if he's just not telling the truth about any overseas travel? Maybe?
I mean, he clearly went overseas as a member of Congress at various points in his career. I don't know what he was up to there, and I think it's fair to say the committee doesn't know what the hell what he's talking about either. So these are legitimate questions to ask when you're up for a cabinet role. And in normal times, Katie, this would be a game changer, right? He wouldn't get confirmed in normal times, right? But these aren't normal times.
Well, I mean, normal times you wouldn't be nominating somebody who threatened to fight somebody on the Senate floor.
Correct.
Let me just play that just so we see it. Let's play this. It's also an exchange with Senator Gary Peters.
So where did you smell war?
Sir, I just said that this was classified. And the dates, locations, and admission, I've never spoke specifically details about.
All right, so strange, but let's move on. Nick, let's talk about the department itself. Do you expect a change in the way the department handles itself and what it focuses on with Markwayne Mullin at the top?
I kind of do. I mean, again, this was a wild hearing today, and there were the two clips that you played were among several sideshows. But in the backdrop, there were some substantive things about the future of DHS, and he took a couple opportunities to signal that he wanted to take things in a different direction from the Kristi Noem regime. He said that in 6 months, he doesn't want DHS and a DHS controversy to be leading the news every day. He also said that he wants, he imagines a role for ICE that is more like a transportation agency, basically going around to jails, and counties that cooperate with ICE to go pick up people that they can deport. That's certainly different from the kind of posture that we saw when they were setting arrest quotas and, going around LA, Chicago, and Minneapolis. He also was asked about ICE's plan to open mega jails across the United States by converting these huge warehouses that Kristi Noem has been purchasing. And he said he needs to do the work to go in and talk to local jurisdictions that have been expressing their opposition to that plan. So that's significant. And then I think the last thing I would just mention is that he said he's going to revoke the policy put in place by Kristi Noem's aide, Corey Lewandowski, that required her approval on any contract over $100,000. And it created a lot of suspicion at the department and, a lot of added bureaucracy. And he said he's going to revoke that.
Yeah, and there was also a question about sanctuary cities and what he would do with the leaders in those places. The administration has been very fiery on sanctuary cities leaders and threatened to revoke federal funding over it. He sounded different, though, Nick, right?
Yeah, the general tone he wanted to strike seemed to be that he wants to go and kind of rebuild relationships, rebuild trust. He said that that even in these jurisdictions that have sanctuary cities, that he recognizes that the leaders, they love the country, they are not unpatriotic, they have a different point of view. So it's a completely different message from the one that we've been hearing from the administration and the department over the last 14 months.
Yeah, I wonder how that's going to go over with the administration. ICE, Sarah, we've talked about this a lot. Bad reputation right now. Can it be rehabbed by this change in leadership?
Well, it can, and I agree that the tone of Senator Mullen is striking the right level. It's calm. It's he's not trying to pick a fight with anybody. That all of that is good. The problem I have is that so much damage has been done already. Trust is undermined quickly, but takes an awful long time to rebuild, and that's going to be a problem. I'm also really concerned. Here would have been a moment to say things are going to change, and that is just apologize to those families who were, along with their loved ones who were killed, that they've been suffering so much. Just apologize. What is so difficult about following your retraction with, yes, I'm sorry for all the grief that those families have gone through? That kind of indicates to me that there is something there that is going to it indicates to me that some of the intonation will not continue beyond this hearing.
Well, yeah, so that's my bigger question. There's so little trust between the American public and these nomination hearings because oftentimes the nominees say one thing and they go and they do something completely different. So talk to me, Sarah, about that trust issue.
Well, it's like I mentioned, I think I've said to you before, Katie, that the ICE has never been at the top of my favorite of the country's favorite agencies. But you never had the kind of bullying that you have seen in the last few months. So my point is one way you could have begun to build some trust and show a new side, and that would be to have just said 2 words, "I'm sorry," and then the other way is let's get the agencies funded. If you can't agree on ICE and the things that the Democrats are proposing, And I think there at least one, the use of masks is going to be a hard hurdle to jump over. But if there is not going to be agreement on ICE anytime soon, take up the offer to fund everybody else. That starts to show that you truly understand that there is a problem when it comes to ICE, and we can work together to do something about this. Other than the political grandstanding, I don't understand why that couldn't be agreed to.
Joining me now, Nevada Senator Jackie Rosen, who sits on the Foreign Relations and Armed Services Committee. It's good to see you, Senator. Do you believe that Markwayne Mullin would bring change to DHS when it comes to both tactics and operation?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I do serve with Senator Mullin, and I do have real concerns, because if he's going to be Kristi Noem round two, number two, or replacement of her, then he doesn't have my support. What we need is someone with a clear head and a clear disposition to run the Department of Homeland Security. The first thing they need to do is be sure that ICE acts like this, like every other law enforcement agency: training, transparency, accountability. He needs to be sure that FEMA, which is responsible for any time anyone in this country has a natural disaster, wildfire, flood, hurricane, earthquake, or other, that they are there in a compassionate way to support our communities, not picking a Democrat or Republican city, but instead taking care of American citizens. Of course, the Coast Guard is there, and our cybersecurity infrastructure agency responsible for public-private partnerships like our energy grid. It is a big job, and it requires someone with disposition, a calm, analytical disposition to act accordingly.
And yet the conventional wisdom is that he will indeed be approved. We haven't gotten a response from Senator Fetterman about how he'll vote. But do you think that for some of your Democratic colleagues, it's just enough that he isn't Kristi Noem?
Well, you know, it isn't enough not to be Kristi Noem. I mean, Kristi Noem, one of the most unqualified folks that we had in the cabinet. In fact, I have a bill out there that you suddenly can't spend money on self-promotion, making commercials for hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money. So it's not enough just not to be her. I want him to tell us what kind of leader he plans to be, and is part of this very important organization that does need oversight, it does need reform, and it does need to act responsibly. So these are the questions I'm going to ask. I was on Homeland Security for 6 years. I'm not currently on that committee, but I plan to speak with him personally on the floor to ask him these questions and see what kind of response I get.
Let me ask you about something you just referenced, that bill you introduced today to prohibit, I think, both cabinet members and other high-ranking officials from using taxpayer dollars for, as you put it, self-promotion ad campaigns. Noem was widely criticized for spending $220 million on a campaign she starred in, and there were lots of reports that when she said that President Trump signed off on it, that was one of the reasons she is no longer a secretary. But are you hearing support for this? Would your bill stop something like that from happening?
Well, what I want to say is this. This is wasteful spending. It's self-promotion. My colleagues are all about stopping wasteful spending, so they should be joining me on this. And Kristi Noem may not be the first, but I want her to be the last. I don't want anyone else to take hard-earned taxpayer dollars. People, like your prior segment, they are feeling it in their businesses, in their homes, at the pump, at the grocery store, the chaotic nature of the tariffs, now a war with Iran and the gas prices going up. We should rein in that spending and that self-promotion. So I would hope that I'll have some co-sponsors of my bill, because they should be all about stopping wasteful spending and self-promotion. And like I said, I want her to be the last.
We've seen the impact that the DHS partial shutdown has had on TSA lines around the country. And, of course, you represent a major tourist hub, Las Vegas. Are you hearing any traction at all on getting a compromise? Where do conversations stand, if anywhere?
Well, I'm not in leadership, but I know Democratic leadership has been working directly with the White House back and forth, trying to come up with some kind of agreement. But I can tell you this, what we're asking for is no more than what our FBI and law enforcement agencies do around the country. We want proper training for our agents. We want transparency in what they do, and we want accountability if they don't treat people with dignity or follow the law. Law enforcement agencies are not above the law themselves, and everyone should be in agreement on this. And as far as TSA, you're exactly right. Our fight, our problems are with ICE and trying to rein in this roving band of I want to say thugs that have really just gone around knowing or thinking that they're above the law, acting without impunity. And so let us fund everything else. I've introduced a bill to fund TSA. They blocked it. I'm doing it again as an amendment to the SAVE Act. We'll see what happens there. I'm going to keep introducing it every day. If they believe what they say, that they want to have this discussion on ICE, then let them have that. We can fund TSA fully. And the president, by the way, my phone's in my pocket. The president has my number. If he gives the word, my bill will pass. So I'll be waiting for that phone call. If he's listening, I'll walk straight to the Capitol. I'll introduce my bill. And if he tells Republicans not to block it, he'll come to his desk as soon as the House will pass it as well.
Senator Jackie Rosen, thank you.